Welcome to the fourth, wow, can you believe it? The fourth installment of our book club. We are reading, in case you missed it, Soul Rising, Guidance for Navigating Your Spiritual Awakening, of which I am one of the 33 authors. Have we reached my chapter yet? No, but it's coming. This isn't the kind of book where you have to absolutely read it in order, so if you would like to jump around, you can. And today we're going to be covering chapters 12 through 14. I really resonated with the series of small experiences being dismissed as informed her spiritual awakening, because there is a bit of a perception that there's this one big gigantic moment, something that happens as the turning point. And that just was not the case for me. It was more that it kept happening over and over again in small ways until it finally caught my attention. And then I was able to recall a bunch of those previous experiences and realizing, whoa, okay, these all contributed. And these were situations where I had dismissed or I had missed the signs, literally, or the wisdom, intuition that was coming through. Another thing that she said on this point was, quote, I eventually learned that following the rules was holding me back, and I allowed my intuition to lead the way. I am definitely still on this journey a bit. I'm so much better at hearing and listening to my intuition or making a point of seeking it out. I think I could probably do that a little bit sooner. Like I still fall into some of the same patterns that I have, just dealing with human world, basic stuff, where you get in a stress cycle and you're just dealing with a lot and you just lose a little sight of the bigger picture. And I will catch myself at a certain point to check in. Maybe I should channel into this. Maybe I should look for guidance. Maybe I should ask for some. But I probably could be doing that more intentionally, more often, and sooner. It's like when you have the release valve when pressure is building up, and I might just kind of keep going because my attitude is, well, I guess I just have to get through this. I have to keep going. And I think that having it as a disruptor is something I'm still working on. And not that I'm necessarily 100% a rule follower. Those who know, rules are for others. But I still look for structure. I look to create structure, even if it's just one that I'm building. It's not I'm necessarily following other people's structure. So it's a odd line that I have to walk or bounce back and forth. I've really been marinating on this idea that when we can acknowledge depth and release the superficiality, so those things in the day-to-day, when it comes to our stressors, that's where a lot of the biggest impact comes. So even just a really simple example, when you can sit in awe and go, oh, wow, that tree. How long has that tree been there? How many bugs have crawled on that tree? How many leaves have grown from that tree and then fallen and new ones? Like, to get in this idea of wonder and thinking about just how complex and also simple everything is, rather than getting stuck in what our society has developed, mandated, implied is what we need to be focusing on, and just rewriting that narrative for ourselves. Easier said than done. Lisa was talking about that when we actually seek control. So what I described before, I just want to get this thing done. I'll just read one more email, just do one more task. When we are controlling, we're actually blocking flow. This was a really great reminder for me to read. Again, it's having a disruptor, and whether it's intuition, using divination tools of any variety, methods and techniques, play, creativity, expression, connection, community, all of these allow us to shift where our energy is going. Think about chi, prana, things that we have talked about before in other conversations and podcast episodes. When we force, we're actually blocking. From her podcast interview on Divine Flow, talking about swerving the overthinking and analysis mode that she and myself and many, many other people are prone to. If we are agreeing to surrender, if we are making the choice to surrender, which we have to do over and over and over again, sometimes that's a simple release. I'm going to let this go, or I'm going to delegate this out, or I don't need to do that. Surrender is deeper, it's bigger. I think I've made some significant grounds and improvement for my blocks. I've mentioned for mediumship as well, like intentionally putting blocks up around that, like not feeling ready. But then the question that, of course, comes through is what is ready? If we always say, well, I'm not ready for that, then how are we going to grow? How are we going to get there? We need some exposure. We need practice. It can be baby steps. It doesn't mean that you jump into the deep end of the pool. You just have to work your way over there, wading in the water. And similarly, people tend to think of a spiritual awakening as the dark night of the soul. It's this pit of despair. It's horrible. It's dark, but it could be in sprints. And I can say for me that that's really what has happened. Yes, was my Saturn return particularly challenging, but it wasn't like everything fell apart all at the same time. It was most concentrated around when my exact return was happening and different conjunctions with my natal placements. But this thing, quote, goes wrong. This thing heightens. This thing becomes more challenging. And there's ebbs and there's flows. And that's what it's been for me. And when I have my, I think it's many rounds of spiritual awakening, when I feel like I'm being tested, like this year, I felt I am being tested. And I know that it's happening. And I'm aware that there's going to be an end to it. But I just have to make sure I'm learning the lesson, because then that will accelerate it and then it will resolve and then it'll go on to the next thing. And I can settle into that. You get to that new level, and then more lessons present when you're ready, when you ask, when you're called, when there's the divine timing. And then you go into the next thing and you just keep, it's like going up the stairs almost. That's how I would view it. We have to talk about Lisa's workshop. The second that I heard what she was going to be doing, I was ready. I was like, let's go. It was just what the doctor ordered for me, because I had a very, very busy week when I sat down to do this. It was jam-packed full of meetings. I will say I have been doing this ever since, but the long and short of it is she taught a couple different mudras, which we talked about in Emma's chapter. Emma has a whole deck on this. She showed two different mudras. So one of them, you're basically, I don't really know how to show this. Like you're kind of pulling your pointer finger down. And for me, I was trying to do this. I was struggling. My hands, my wrists and everything felt so tight. I'm like trying to do it. I'm like, I can't do what her hands are doing. And so I figured out that for me, I can kind of do the bend. And I think it's just because I have so much tension going on, and just kind of push my hands together. So it would push my fingers, would help to get them down and look a little bit more like hers. So you have the first one, which is the pointer finger is held down by the thumb. And this was the negative. So you hold this and you are saying or thinking different negative thoughts. And then what she was saying, and I have kept doing this. Like I have had situations where I'm in a bunch of meetings in a row, or I was running back to back. Now I have to go to an appointment, and I thought I was going to be late. And I'm sitting in the waiting room and I'm like trying to calm myself down. And I've just popped into this, just focusing my breathing, keep repeating the things to myself, and then just waiting for a release to happen. It's very subtle, but it's like you feel the shift. You're like, oh, okay, now that's done. So you know when it's done. And then you switch to do the positive one, which is putting the pointer finger on top of the thumb. This one I had way more trouble with for whatever reason. I can do it now. I think it's just because I've been practicing. But I was just doing the same thing, pushing together, just holding them. And then you think positive thoughts. So you could flip maybe what you had been thinking as the negative, or just adding new affirmations. And so then you do that and just do that for a little bit. And then I kind of wait for like the intuitive internal cue of when should I stop that one. But normally what's been happening for me is when I do the negative one, I actually feel a release, and then I know that I'm done. And then I'm just kind of doing the positive one to neutralize it and like negate it a little bit. So I have been using that ever since I did this workshop. So thank you, Lisa. Some other things that she talked about in the workshop. One, she was mentioning, oh, I'm talking really quickly. And I was laughing because I was watching the workshop on times 2 speed, which I do a lot with podcasts. So I'm listening to her on times 2. And I was like, all right, this is comfortable. I can hear her. She doesn't sound like she's going too fast. And then she thought on times 1 that she was going fast. So don't fret about that. For some people who just process on that hyperspeed, it was fine. It was perfect for me. But she was just like so cute when she was talking, so authentic and honest and unfiltered, and just this really, really sweet, and genuine way. I also saw that she's a teacher on Inside Timer. So I'm definitely going to reach out to her. Like, we should collab or connect or something. I just really liked her energy and seeing her in action. And I have mentioned that in some other book club installments. It really makes an impact, not just reading the people's pages in the book and getting a little bit into their head or hearing them on the podcast, but also being able to see them like in their element, something that they did just in the privacy of their own home, something that they're teaching and explaining, because it just adds these other layers and really humanizes everyone, which is why I think this overall is such a great experience. And I would encourage you to dabble into all of the above versus just reading the book. The book acts as the foundation, but like look the people up, like go to their website if they have a podcast or YouTube channel or interviews that they've done or the workshops here. Check them out because it really endears you to everyone, which I've enjoyed about this process. And the last thing that I wanted to mention was I'm sitting there because as I do these, I just have my notebook ready, my pen and paper, and I jot things down. And at one point, she was asking the question, do you have grounding practices? And I started laughing. LOL, no. And as I was writing this down and saying, okay, this question, do you have the grounding practices? It immediately dropped in for me to do something. And I actually did this yesterday, I think, for the first time. I finally did it. It came through from my guides to just lay on the floor for a few minutes in silence. So this could just be as an everyday practice for grounding, or if I've had a particularly stressful day. I'm already using some of the mudras here, and that has been a great addition. I've been, not every single day, but I have been remembering and having the mindfulness to actually use it in those certain moments, which has been a big help. And then if I am in a certain situation, like I was the other day where I had a stretch of meetings and I'm just like, I just need a moment, laid down on the floor. I did the mudras at the same time. I just was taking some deep breaths, staring up at the ceiling, calming for a moment. And it's really a simple practice, but I want to keep using some of that, not just because my guides are suggesting it, because as I've been implementing some of these changes, I have been noticing like an immediate shift of feeling better. So if I do it regularly, then I expect that that'll give me a broader shift in the longer term and maybe help me climb up the stairs. Rebecca's chapter was really highlighting this pattern of burnout in the build up to awakenings. And as we know, I've talked about burnout a lot, overworking, overextending. And I actually had a similar experience as she did because I would say I had one of the more extreme versions of burnout right before my legitimate spiritual awakening that I wrote about in this book. Earlier in the pandemic, it's like my body was malfunctioning. I was so fried. I was tired. I felt out of it. Like I felt like it's just the middle of the workday and I was trying to work with people and I felt like I was constantly disassociating. I felt like I was having trouble keeping it together. Like I couldn't, I'd be writing something and then I'm looking at it and just being like, that makes no sense. Or there's so many typos. It's like more than usual. I tell it I was off. I was having trouble communicating as clearly while speaking as well. Like I felt like I was very tongue tied and talking over myself. I just was aware that this was happening and it was so sustained. And I knew that I needed a break. And I knew that it was past the point of not being sustainable. It had been unsustainable for like a year. And this was my total breaking point. Fortunately, it was shortly after that that I actually was having my spiritual awakening. So I started developing some of these tools. I switched jobs because that was something that came through. I had done this reading with someone, and he specifically brought up that my job was detracting from my overall well-being. And I'm sitting there like, yeah, it has. Like I knew that. I knew it was not working for me. And within a couple months, I was able to switch jobs at my company. Like, opportunity opened up that I wanted. And then things got better. It was a very challenging job, but I didn't get to that point again. And I haven't since, but it still can manifest as being physical for me. More on that in some of the other episodes. You'll hear me talking about some of the manifestations of burnout. And back to Rebecca, I really enjoyed that reading her story felt like this beautiful, like witch origin story. It's a woman rediscovering her power, tapping into spirituality, becoming wiser, braver, and more authentic. And she said a quote that I liked: I felt the strings of my soul. Oh, great. I love the revelation that flaws can be gifts. Again, everything is a growth point. So the strings, puppeteering, keeping everything together, everything is of significance, everything is of importance. And another great line on this point, quote, the deeper we go, the deeper there is to go. And that goes back to the point that I was mentioning earlier for Lisa's chapter, that if we can just look around and just take in how many layers there are to everything in our existence, the things outside of ourselves, in addition to ourselves, we can go that deep into ourselves. We are an endless, I'll say not pit, but we're an endless well of potential and energy, expression, truth. So I ended up doing a sidebar here because there were some themes that Rebecca talked about in her chapter, and they are topics that I have wanted to research for months, years, frankly. And I went, perfect. I'm going to do this research and I'm going to fold it right in, tuck it into this episode. So this is almost like a mini Synergy to Synastry regular episode being tossed in here that I did some investigation. So the first thing that I wanted to look into was divine feminine energy in the workplace. We talked in the interview with Vanessa Grace in season 2 about the divine feminine. So that's definitely one to check out as a precursor to this conversation. What might this look like when we have a traditionally often masculine, patriarchal environment? Corporations, especially, but work and business is often viewed as being strict. There's hierarchy, there's you do this and you do that, sometimes very linear, and oftentimes, as we know, dysfunctional for a many number of reasons. So I wanted to see what would it look like whether you are a solopreneur, small business, person in a very large company, individual contributor, manager, or leadership, wherever you happen to fall. How could we infuse more of the divine feminine energy into our day-to-day? The core foundations were EQ, emotional intelligence, and empathy, making that the foundation, the center of all interactions, which can be hard when you deal with some people and you're like, this person is frustrating or a little bit annoying. Having that empathy, approaching everybody with trying to find the common ground and understanding. Responding versus reacting. This is boundaries. And this is challenging. And for me, I've had many jobs where the entire function of the role was to technically react. Something comes in, you're responding to an issue, you're responding to a question, an inquiry. And I would at certain points try to figure out how can I prevent those questions from coming in. So I was being proactive to just reduce that. But it wasn't really about responding versus reacting. And that's when you can get more activated. You will react. That's why we need to lay on the ground, do our mudras in order to center ourselves, returning to that EQ, the place of empathy. So it is a response. On a similar line, we have uplifting others, collaborating. When we are people-centered, when we are considering the well-being, depth of each person that we're interacting with, they're not just some person in that department and who sends me these emails or is always asking me questions or talks too much in meetings, whatever that might look like. We still want to lift them up. We want to seek understanding of who they are holistically as a person and be able to lift them up. Obviously, you can get some return from that. So there's that too. But it's not about me versus them, because that becomes hierarchy. That's competition. We don't need to be in competition. We are all on the same team. We have the same mission. Let's get the best out of each other and work together. And to that point, being creative. A recommendation that came through was actually to block time in your calendar to be inspired. You've blocked time not just for focus time of I need to get things done. I get too many meetings scheduled on my calendar. Let me put this time block so I can concentrate and go on do not disturb. It's actually not that. It's a step further. It's just putting time in your calendar to sit there and not have an agenda, to have boredom, if you will. Allow inspiration to drop in. Maybe you're saying, I'm just going to meditate, see what comes through, problems that could be solved, things that could now be anticipated. Giving yourself space, it's a sacred pause in the middle of your day. It doesn't have to be every day, but at least incorporating it in on some sort of regular basis. And next is following your energy. Are you tired? Take a break. Are you hungry or haven't eaten in a long time? Go eat. This gets back to, it's obvious, but this is not forcing. This is finding the flow. Should be a surprise to no one. Intuitive decision making. Check in with your guides. Should I do this? Should I not do this? Does this work? Does not work? Is this helpful? Is this not helpful? You can ask it as a yes or no, seeking guidance. That also gets you in the framework of responding versus reacting when you check in with your intuition. Part of the patriarchal hierarchical structure that we have in most workplaces is based off of a 24-hour period. And so I thought this was a very interesting insight that we know biologically, and also talked about in Vanessa's episode, hormone-wise, that men tend to operate on a 24-hour cycle. That's because the masculine energy is the sun. Bring this back to astrology, divine life force energy, that is the sun. That's what the sun represents. But the moon is the divine feminine energy, and they have different cycles. You have a period. Why is it 28 days approximately? Because it's connected to the moon. That's why people will sync, especially when they're not on birth control, syncing to what's happening with the moon. There is a reason for that. And that's another way that you can reframe. Rather than looking at your work and saying, what do I have to do today? I am guilty of this all the time. We think we'll just focus on one day at a time. But also, if we're focusing on one day at a time, we're operating in the 24-hour cycle. And that puts so much pressure on ourselves. I have to get these things done today. Versus if we do a total reframe, which I'm going to have to sit and figure out how I can apply this, because this is a very, very big reframe. But how do you shift so that it's a month long? This is a piece in my month-long journey. And this could be from one moon to the next time the moon gets into the same sign. It could be based on your cycle, if you wanted to follow that. Again, more details in Vanessa's episode. It could be from new moon to new moon. There's a lot of different options that anybody can choose, regardless of if you are menstruating or not. You could also just do the calendar month, the first to the end. That's it. So it can fall anywhere in any of these categories. This was a big light bulb for me because it could help diminish that chatter that we have around there's not enough hours in the day. Well, if we stop thinking about needing to focus on the unit of a day, then now we have a whole month. Think about all that we can do, and we often do in a month. Other thing that I looked into from reading Rebecca's chapter, she talked a little bit, very in passing, about Hindu goddesses, and I had the little intuitive nudge to look some of them up, but also just see who I was drawn to as somebody that I should research, look into, and fold into this conversation. And the one that jumped out instantly from the list was Shakti. That's Shakti. I was laughing, of course, because it relates to everything that we were just talking about. Common translations of Shakti include power. That's the common denominator. Specifically, divine feminine energy. She represents, quote, the fundamental creative instinct underlying the cosmos, and is the energizing force of all divinity, of every being and everything. She's associated with the solar plexus, if you're familiar at all with the chakra system. That's the yellow one. The willpower, I will, our personal power and strength. I also had looked up what are the common mantras associated with her. So if we wanted to do any sort of a meditation, connecting to this energy, what came through was I'm, spelled aim, AIM, which helps to focus your mind and heart so that you're aligning with that divine feminine energy. Interestingly, supports and strengthens your voice and your vocal cords, throat chakra activation, so that you are speaking your truth. That also has clear audience coming in through there as well. Opens up the lungs, clears your senses, and astrologically, it's associated, which makes sense with this throat chakra activation here, connects with Mercury, which is our thoughts, our speech, all forms of communication, and naturally the moon as well. In tandem, what you have is speech, communication, expression, thoughts, your mind, and the emotions, the processing, and the physical body all coming together. Now that we've finished the sidebar of little educational stuff, please let me know what you think and how you resonated with my little research. And thank you, Rebecca, for inspiring me to look these things up and investigate and dive into some topics that I've been wanting to look into for quite some time. To close out for Rebecca, she made an appearance on the podcast and also did a workshop as well. So just some thoughts on that. She was talking about this idea of deconstructing in order to reconstruct. Again, this is the not necessarily burning things down, but it's the death and rebirth. It's the cycle of transformation. It's the Pluto energy. It's the Saturn return energy. She talks a lot about radiance. That's like her thing. And radiance being living authentically to get out of our own way and integrate the shadows. So it's not just about focusing on the light, but it's about, quote, healing the dark, if you will, blending all of it together, merging it. We can take very, very small practices in a day-to-day. I've talked about some of them in here as well that you can do to support that energetic alignment. In the workshop, she was talking about finding your radiance ritual. So what could you do based on the signs in the zodiac? So she had a little bit of astrology meets this radiance concept. And I thought this was a perfect complement to what came out of Lisa's workshop and really what I've been primed to do more of, reconnecting to myself, my space, silence, peace, and heart center. You can watch the workshop for the complete overview, but the ones that I paid the most attention to as applicable to my chart are the earth sign and the water sign, because I am water dominant, but earth is in a close second and I have a big earth trine. So I felt drawn to listen to those and think about how I could enact them in my life. So for the earth signs, suggestions, creating an altar. This makes a lot of sense because I will often just get the ping, move certain things around in my room, shift the energy. So there's about this connection to your physical space. And I definitely do this. So this was enlightening for me. Self-massage. I am someone who started doing, every time I get out of the shower, I'll put lotion on my feet. And that's because I got a lot of Pisces energy. Obviously, that's water. So we have an intersection here. But your feet, it's grounding. It's the point of contact with earth. This is why I knew when I got to this point that I needed to focus on this intersection, because the lines are a bit blurred for me. And it is not just one exclusively. And she also talked about earthing, which, as we discussed before, that was the takeaway that came through from Lisa's practice of just laying flat on the ground. But you also could walk barefoot in nature, hug a tree, all that fun stuff. And for the water signs, a shower ritual. Sometimes I actually do this. I don't have a full routine, but sometimes I will visualize either filling up or washing the negative energy away, the worries, the stress, etc. Pulling oracle cards. I do this daily. Check. Boundary meditations. LOL. Sign me up. All of the above. Like, I could, as an example, when I'm laying flat on the ground, especially if I'm doing that because I'm feeling stressed, like I need to set a boundary, then I could have the mudras going. I could be breathing. I could do some visualization or channeling, reinforcing my energetic field and boundaries. So I really could blend all of this stuff together and give myself that reset. Last but not least, we have Kirsten. She was talking about the infinite routes to find our way home to ourselves. What a beautiful sentiment here. When I read the part about how she was living in London, I got completely shot into this scene. This happened when I read chapter 11 too. I was minding my own business, reading the book. And then it's like this whole scene was playing out in my head. And I'm there, but this hasn't happened. And I don't know exactly under what circumstances this might happen. It's like in a bar somewhere. And I saw this girl talking to a guy and he was hitting on her. And intuitively, I could tell she's not into it and she needs the hook to get out of the conversation and the out. So in the scene, I went up to her and pretended that I knew her and then pull her away. And then we were chatting and actually becoming friendly. And then I came back to reality and was like, okay, I'm sitting here holding the book. Why am I thinking about that? I don't really know why this keeps happening when I'm reading this book, but I'm just putting this in here as a pin. So as I finish the book out, I can see how many times this happened and if there is a specific through line or message in these visions, because it could just be clairvoyance. But what? Is it a prediction or are these just messages I'm supposed to be receiving? I don't know. Kirsten also talked about how astrology helped her feel seen. I totally agree. It's a really great tool for validation, acting as a mirror. I talk about that when I teach astrology and when I provide readings for people, that if you don't use it for anything else, you don't have to use it for planning or predicting. You can just use it to understand yourself a little bit more. And she also talked about masculine and feminine. So we are circling back yet again to what I was just researching for Rebecca's chapter. And I also wanted to research this too. It has been on my list for forever. When we spoke to Vanessa, she gave an answer, but also was admitting that it's not something that she's felt compelled or interested to look into or understand any further. She's like, my focus is divine feminine. That's what I'm supposed to be paying attention to. So it's been on my list to research the divine masculine. And so, again, wonderful sidebar. Thank you very much. So I was able to do this and then fold it in. So we kind of have like a full story arc with all of my side research because, of course, it all related to each other. When we're talking about divine masculine energy, this is not strictly to the workplace. This is just in life, applicable anywhere. This is strength, action, integrity, endurance, grounding, and an empowering presence. So not dominating, but empowering, coming from the ground up. It's a resiliency, the integrity, the truth. It's a very healthy reframe because you can see where the toxic side comes from and you read this and go, oh, that does sound really nice. It's great to meet people who walk through life with this type of energy. And again, it does not have to be men or people who identify as male. This is about the energetics, divine feminine, divine masculine. When you are aligned with or channeling divine masculine energy, this is promoting leadership, protection, not I am making sure that this happens, I am seeking control, but it's support. You are helping other people, you're creating safe circumstances where they can ground and feel empowered. You are aligned with purpose. You are working in harmony with the divine feminine. They are holding hands, besties. Because reminder, this is the sun and the moon. They connect. They relate directly to each other. We don't just have one and then not the other. They're both important. Divine masculine will work with the divine feminine in order to create balance and a feeling of wholeness. So yeah, thank you to the lovely writers today because I really went on a trip with some of these, literally, spiritually, psychically. I don't really know. There's a lot going on in just these 3 chapters. And the next batch of chapters are going to come after the Roman lore miniseries. I will share which ones those are at the end of the next life update and reading episode. So make sure to tune in for that one. That was a close one.